Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started now and have a welcome from your town administrator.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their summer schedule to be here for us to talk about economic development, which is the engine that drives local economies, especially here in Marshfield. It's nice to see some of our businesses that are here this evening to hear what's going on. I just want to say thank you to the planning staff, Greg Guimond, our planner, Karen Horn, our assistant planner, have worked very hard to put this together. We have Nancy Parecka from the ZBA. We have Lynn Fiddler, our newest select person in the town here. We have Jamie Devaney from the chamber. Paul Kaufman and I were colleagues. We served together. Paul was a former school committee person. I can almost name everyone in the room, but I just wanted to briefly recognize those people. Thank everyone for being here, and we'll get the program going for everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, and welcome everyone, and happy to have those both in the room and at home. This is a hybrid in-person and virtual meeting, so we appreciate everyone's giving us a little bit of grace as if we figure out the technology glitches along the way. We got the projector set up just in the nick of time, so we're happy to have that and happy to have you with us this evening. So my name is Josh Fiala. I'm a principal planner at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC. We're the regional planning agency that serves Marshfield and the greater Boston area. We have an agenda this evening related to the economic development plan. And so we'll walk you through that, but we want to introduce the study and introduce the team that's involved in the work. Have an overview presentation that gives you some background information about economic development in the town. And then we'll be looking effectively from there, shifting to more of an interactive meeting format this evening. The goal and purpose of our event this evening is really to gather feedback and input from all of you, both with us in the room and at home, as we guide our study to really respond to the community's priorities and goals for economic development in the town. So we'll be working through a few questions for you all. I'm joined by my colleague, Sasha Perotti, who's the sub-regional coordinator for the South Shore Coalition, which Marshfield is a part of within our region. Let me start with a brief introduction in terms of the project itself. As mentioned, we're guided by the town's planning department, Greg Guimond and Karen Horn. This is a planning board sponsored project, so we're working with the planning board, have met with them once already, and we'll be meeting with them along the way as we move through this process. So you can watch for those meetings if you want to follow along the progress of this study. Some questions about Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, what we are, what we're about. So we're the regional planning agency for the greater Boston area. You can see on the map on the screen, this is the greater Boston region, which we have as our member communities. We provide technical assistance to those communities, such as the Economic Development Plan in Marshfield, and we're happy to be a part of them. We have about 100 staff with planners and economic development, land use, environment, transportation, all sorts of things, public health, arts and culture, and we really are here to serve the communities within the greater Boston region and expand the local planning expertise that's available in the towns. So what's this plan all about? The Economic Development Plan is really focused on a few things: economic activity in the town, the commercial tax base and supporting it and making sure that it's sustained and growing, commercial and residential uses in the town, and that includes redevelopment of properties, thinking about the future of properties in general. And we're really overall providing goals and actions to facilitate economic investment in the town. That's the overarching goal. To do that, we're focused on the non-residential parts of the town, really. So the downtown, the areas around downtown, the industrial park areas and the planned mixed-use development areas around the industrial park, the villages, including Brant Rock and Green Harbor, and then also the town pier and Blackman's Point. So all these areas are more or less non-residential districts. They really are the focus. We're not in this study so much thinking about the neighborhoods and the residential areas, but really the economic drivers and commercial and industrial areas of the town. You can see those on the zoning map here, mostly the non-yellow areas that we're looking at. And these are the zoning areas, basically the non-R districts, the Bs, the OP, and the I are really the focus of this work. It's a little easier to see those areas isolated, so it's the areas in blue, effectively the lighter and dark tones of blue, mostly along the Route 139 corridor. You see those areas gathered. So first we have a little bit about the work plan. It's pretty straightforward. So 3 tasks overall. We're kind of in the middle, straddling task 1 and task 2 presently. We've done some existing conditions analysis, gathering of data in Marshfield, economic conditions, taking a look at what's here today and what the trends are looking like. With you, starting tonight, we'll be defining goals and strategies, and then working through this process to refine those with the community and planning board's help. And then we'll wrap all that into a report with final recommendations for the town, with both recommendations and actions to advance those. We're about a third of the way through the process so far. We've mostly been behind the scenes doing some of that analysis so far. This is our first community-wide meeting. We've done some stakeholder interviews as well. We'll be, from here, pivoting really toward the definition of goals and strategies based upon your feedback, providing a preliminary list of recommendations that will then be refined with the community at a second workshop, which will likely land in the November or so timeframe. And then we'll be turning toward some final recommendations after that point. Along the way, as I've mentioned, we'll be meeting with the planning board to check in with them. We're building on a wealth of previous studies that have really formed a foundation for our work and formed a foundation for the implementation activities that the town has had underway over the previous years. Really, we see a few of these as foundational. There's the recent rapid recovery planning in Brant Rock, which was a statewide pandemic relief effort, looking at ways to really provide some important assistance to small businesses, particularly in business districts. The multi-hazard mitigation plan is another one with some important information relative to the assets of the town. The housing production plan was recently updated in 2019. And the foundation really is the previous master plan, of which this process will begin an update and renewal of that master plan with the economic development component. So that was prepared back in 2015, but still has some foundational information and aspects to it. So true to advertisement, this is an interactive meeting, so we do have a few ways to interact and engage with the audience this evening, mostly through some polling that we've set up with the technology. People at home can do it, people in the room can do it, and if you're a little technology shy, we also have paper copies that you can use as well. So let's get us set up for that first round. If you wouldn't mind, if you're in the room, you can use your cell phone. And what's great about that is your results will actually show up live, so we'll get to see how people are responding as we go through the meeting. If you're at home, what I recommend is you open up a separate internet browser at the computer you're sitting at and go to pollev.com/MAPC poll, and that will connect you to the polling as well. On the cell phone, if you send the text message MAPC POLL to the recipient 22333, then that will connect you to the poll and you should get a return message back. Once you connect, you'll be connected throughout the meeting, so you don't need to go through this process again. So I'm advancing the next slide just so you'll see, but at the top are the same instructions. So you can go to pollev.com/MAPC poll, and then once you're connected, either on the screen on your computer, you can select the answer, or on your phone, you would respond with the letter of the choice. So in this case, we're asking, what is your primary relationship to the town of Marshfield? And if anyone does want a paper copy, Sasha has a paper copy if you'd prefer. And we have some pens and pencils too. And we'll make sure that we get those copies at the end of the meeting too.
Would you mind going back to the previous slide just to log in?
Yeah, it's actually at the very top of this screen.
Thank you.
So if you go to, the text message is MAPC POLL, and you want to send that to, the phone number would be 22333. So we'll give it a minute on this first question as people get connected to it so everyone can participate. It does look like we've had some success so far, so we see some responses. Is everyone mostly?
Advice on how to weight it if you're multiple categories?
Unfortunately, I do have to say, the way the polls are set up, we have to only have one option. So I know that many people would have multiple choices on several of these answers. So choose the one you feel most connected to. All right, so everyone mostly connected? Okay. So we'll go to the next question, which is, where do you live if you do live in the town? And the other answer, which is a little hidden at the bottom, is that you either do not live here or you prefer not to answer as well. And this information is useful for us to get a feel for who's in the meeting with us this evening. We'll be comparing the results to the broader townwide demographics just to see if there's anyone that we're missing in the conversation and patterns. So it looks like from the responses we have on the screen so far, pretty even split between Brant Rock and North Marshfield as the leaders. We've got residents also from Fieldston, Green Harbor, Marshfield Hills, Seaview, and maybe a couple non-residents as well, which is fair game. Business owners are welcome, and other stakeholders who are involved and interested in economic development. Great. And give me a hint if I'm going through these too fast or too slow, too. So I'll go on to the next one. So this next question is, where do you work? And these answers are actually populated from the data analysis that we've done. So we didn't just pick them at random, but they are places where the data shows people are going from Marshfield for work. All right. It's interesting. Lots of people also working in Marshfield, which we'll see later may not be the actual townwide trend. And what is your age can be occasionally a touchy subject, but we're interested in demographics in this meeting as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. And lastly, this one's a little bit different. You can put in a keyword or two. And we'd just like to know, without any of our presentation materials or getting into further framed questions, just in general, what do you think is most important for economic development in Marshfield? You can add a keyword, a few keywords, whatever you'd like. But you can just type that into the text or onto your computer screen. And if you do, this is formatted as a word cloud, so the more frequent answer, the same word is used, the larger that word will get. So you'll see if there's agreement. Looks like there is some agreement already on infrastructure. I just have to say quickly, too, I'm really happy this technology is working. The last meeting I hosted, we couldn't get this to actually interact like this, so I'm glad it's working for Marshfield. All right, to give that just another minute or so since it involved a little more typing. See, infrastructure still as the leader here, but also planning and community. It's moving around a little too much. Shops, Brant, I assume that, yep, there's a rock there too, Brant Rock. Money, preservation. Great. Thank you, everyone, for providing those initial answers. And we get the all the data that's entered in the back end of this program, so we'll be reviewing it. Each of the answers that have been collected. So thank you for that. So I wanted to provide a brief overview presentation just to give a baseline of data from the analysis that we've done so far to frame our conversation this evening. So first, each of these slides, first I'll point out, has quite a bit of information, so I'm just going to highlight a few things on each of them so we can keep moving along. In terms of demographics, Marshfield's population has been increasing and is projected to continue to increase. You can see in the graph the population trend line from 1990 to 2040. The town has the largest population relative to its neighboring municipalities, which all have similar growth trend lines. The population pyramid of the town is interesting. It shows the age cohorts vertically and then male and female within each of those cohorts, and that's what creates the pyramid. Because Marshfield's pyramid is more box-shaped, it indicates more of a steady state for the population. If it was an inverted triangle, for example, that would be a shrinking population where most people in the elderly cohorts. If it were a pyramid with the tip at the top, it would be a growing population with most people in the younger cohorts. I think what's more interesting about this graphic is if you break those age cohorts down by generation, the largest generation in Marshfield is Generation X, which I wouldn't have assumed initially. So you see that with age cohorts followed by Generation Z, which would be either the children of baby boomers or children of Generation X. So I think that's an interesting insight, just that, I guess as a member of Gen X, we think of ourselves as the sort of younger, but we're actually getting older now too, so that's happening. In terms of race and ethnicity, Marshfield's population is predominantly white. That's compared to Plymouth County, which you see on the screen now, Massachusetts, the Commonwealth at large. And interestingly enough, it's also a little different than the jobs demographics as well. So similar percentage of the white population in terms of jobs versus residents, but a growing portion of the pie for the Black and African-American population within that demographic pie on the bottom left compared to the pie above it for Marshfield's residents. So compared to its neighbors, Marshfield has the largest labor force and is in the middle in terms of number of jobs. There are about 723 total businesses in the town. The current unemployment rate is low, and the disposable income is quite high. So you can see those across the facts there. If you look at the employment by industry, the largest of those 723 total businesses are within the sectors of education services, healthcare and social assistance, professional and technical services, and construction. And it's a little different if you look at those same figures of the establishments by employment. So that looks at a shift somewhat and includes education services again as the top sector, but also includes retail trade, accommodation and food services, construction, healthcare, and social assistance. And you can see the spread of sectors across those establishments and employment. In terms of where that employment is concentrated, pretty similar to the zoning map that we looked at previously in the study area focus. So the areas along Route 139 are really the focal concentration, the industrial area, the downtown area, the village districts along the coast. And the largest employers, putting some business names to this data. Here are the largest businesses by employment, with Road to Responsibility at the top of that list, followed by the supermarkets. So it was interesting from the information we saw in the polling that a lot of people in the room or at home are working in Marshfield. But most of the Marshfield employees, workers, are actually leaving town to go to their work. So about 10,000 plus are leaving Marshfield to go to employment somewhere else. Many headed towards the Boston area, headed north. Others headed toward Brockton or Plymouth. And then you see about 4,500 workers are coming into Marshfield daily who work or who live in other places and who work in the town. And the data shows about 1,900 live and work in the town as well. So you all might be among that 1,900. This doesn't account for, this is where your office is located, doesn't necessarily account for pandemic-related work from home policies. So, for example, if your office is located in Boston, but you've been working in Marshfield for the last 2 years, then this data wouldn't reflect that. And when people are going to work, they're mostly getting there by driving alone, with about a almost 40-minute mean travel time. I don't know if that squares with your experience. I feel like 40 minutes is probably kind of optimistic, right? All right. So in terms of the retail environment, so this is an analysis which measured the retail dollars spent in the community versus those that are spent outside of the community. And this was an interesting result. What it showed was that all sectors of retail are leaking dollars out of Marshfield, meaning that there could be more retail stores of almost all types in the town, and they could be supported by local dollars. That's what the figures show. That may not be sort of the current reality relative to how people are spending money and the patterns related to both COVID, how that's impacting people's spending patterns, and inflation, and the relationship of e-commerce as well to local spending. So those are the three sort of countervailing trends, but it does show a strong ability to add more stores, particularly food service showed up as a very strong point in this analysis. If we look at the town revenue, these graphs show that most of the town's revenue is derived from local taxes at 70%. Of that, 66% are residential taxes. So that's really those residential property taxes are a core feature of the town's budget. You can see the industrial and commercial are the slivers of 4% and 1% along the edge of that pie chart on the right. Also interesting on this chart is the local options meal tax, which has been a strong source of revenue from the non-property tax generated. And you can see relative to the other towns, looks like I'm covering it up a little bit with this toolbar, but Marshfield's in yellow, and as soon as the meals tax was enacted, kind of Marshfield shot up above its neighboring communities. And that has had a little bit of a downturn due to the pandemic, but would be expected to rebound. Some of the figures around Marshfield's housing that show up in that updated housing production plan I mentioned. So Marshfield is predominantly single-family homes, which you see is not unusual relative to your neighbors. You're actually a little bit less dominantly single-family home than most of your neighbors. And the housing tenure is mostly owner-occupied. So owner-occupied single-family homes, less multifamily, less rental. The housing, subsidized housing inventory, SHI, which relates to the 40B process, is at 8.3% for the town of Marshfield. And relative to affordability, there are some, this chart shows for the lower income brackets, some issues with affordability in terms of housing. So the 10th percentile of earners and the 25th percentile of earners would both have difficulty meeting the median rent, which is the left dotted red line, and the median cost for owning a home, which is the right dotted red line. And once you get to that spending 30% or more of your monthly income, which is about the threshold that lenders will look at for mortgages or other means, that's when it gets difficult, and you see those difficulties in those bottom two, 10th and 25th percentiles on this chart. So now that was a lot, and kind of both broad ranging and kind of skimming along the surface, a lot of detail on those slides. So I just want to stop here for a second before we get into more interactive questioning, if there were any general questions or thoughts about this.
Can you go back to the slide that showed 8.3% subsidized housing?
Yes.
So the guideline in Massachusetts right now is 10%.
Correct.
So any community that has 10% or above has more say around, Chapter B or whatever, Chapter.
Yes. Yeah, so for a 40B project, the question was around the subsidized housing inventory and the 8.3%. So 10%, excuse me, is the statutory threshold. And once a town surpasses that, they have the ability to basically say no to 40B projects.
So 8.3% strikes me as fairly high relative to all of our neighbors. Would that be true?
I think that is true, yes. I did not include a chart of those, but yes, in my recollection, I think that they're generally lower than 8%.
Thank you.
Yes.
Another question related to this slide. I know within our town, we have a large summer residence, and we also have folks, even within this room, that rent their homes, even if there are a summer resident. Is there a reason why that wasn't captured here?
Yeah, in terms of seasonality of the housing?
It's another tax revenue stream for the town. We just passed it at our last town meeting. Just curious.
Yeah, I think the housing data on seasonal usage is generally a little less dependable, but we could look into it. We haven't looked into it as much, but we can look into it more.
Maybe because it's new. Again, it was a new tax stream. Mike Morris would probably speak to that. Also, looking at your previous one on the jobs and the roles, you had education. Was that showing municipality and commercial combined? Why was that 1,400? Like the highest job role, or just curious. And then my last question, which
Yes.
you can answer, I'll give them all to you. Rental income. I have a girlfriend that's looking for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and you can't find anything in Marshfield under $2,500. So I'm just wondering where the 1,500 or the 13 came from.
Well, that's to 2020, not 2022.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
significantly higher than that.
Okay, so I'll repeat the questions that we talked about. Seasonality of the housing, and we can look at the seasonality of the housing data a little bit, dig into that. We haven't done that. The second question was about, sorry, remind this, the job, oh yes, the jobs.
Just
So I do-
me as education services.
yes, the education services, whether it includes commercial and municipal uses, I do believe those figures include municipal staff as well. So that would be where that number's increased from. And then the third question was just about the data on the housing rent and it relative to the reality of what people are experiencing. And we do tend to see that actually the data lags behind what people see in terms of pricing, typically being less, like is not keeping pace with what people see day to day. So this is presently, what you see as median gross rent listed there could be extra lagging because it's a U.S. Census data figure. So that's what the notation for the 2016 to 2020 is. So you're actually getting data that's averaged over that time period. So if you can imagine, rents from 2016 are probably lagging quite a bit from where they were in 2022. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you had accommodation and food service as one category, and then you talked about the tax income for food service itself. I'm just wondering, accommodation is just hotels and motels, correct? And I don't think that's a significant chunk of the Marshfield economy. Do you happen to know how much of that total is food service and how much of it is room rent?
Yeah, I would agree. There are not as many hospitality uses in the town, so accommodation would be less of that overall chunk that you see here on the screen clustered together. I think we can dig into those codes a little bit, the way that they're gathered here, and differentiate between the two. That would be interesting to look at. Yes.
Josh, thanks for all the data. It's super helpful. I hope the presentation's actually available for us to download later on.
Yes, so that's a good point. I'll cover that at the end of the presentation too, but we will be passing everything along to the planning department and they'll help us get up onto the town website.
Really helpful. One question on the inflow and outflow of job count. I noticed it was dated 2019. Super interested to see how that analysis changed through COVID. What we've experienced in our membership is a lot of people transferred from corporate jobs downtown to either work from home at those same jobs. So a lot of them have now started independent businesses, small entrepreneurships. So would imagine that numbers changed, and whatever impact that would have on our planning process might be material.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The question was, or the comment was about the 2019 data in this case, and that working patterns have changed and people have actually shifted the way that they work or who they work for. And I think that anecdotally is true. I think we're a little bit beholden to the way data is processed in these cases and trying to get this up to date. We are using what is most current and up to date and available today. But I agree. I would expect that we'll see in a year or more time when the new data is available that 2020 and 2021 are likely going to have some major differences in the patterns. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Hi. I had a question. I know this is a work in progress in regards to the growth trend and how those numbers are. There we are.
Yes.
So the data and how I see the projected data, and if you could just explain that perhaps in the future, or if you have that information available.
Yeah, so these, the population data projections came from work that our agency, MAPC, did with the UMass Donahue Center, and that was in service to Mass DOT transportation projections for how the roadways will be used in the future. So that is the best sort of demographic analysis and population projections the Commonwealth has, and it does show, as you can see, sort of that modest growth trend line continuing for Marshfield and its South Shore neighbors. I haven't looked at all of our regions' projected growth lines, but I do think it's generally projected as growth. I can't recall off the top of my head a municipality that's projected as decline, but so that's the source for that data. Yeah, they're almost a straight line, right? Yes, Greg.
Josh, just after you started, our vice chair for the planning board, Katie O'Donnell, slipped into the room too, so just so people know there are other people.
Sorry.
Thank you for joining us. So our vice chair of the planning board has joined us as well. That was a comment. All right. So, and Sasha, did we have comments from home?
No comments from.
Okay. I should say that if you're at home and would also like to be a part of a comment or question, you can put it into the chat, and Sasha will relay that to me, and we'll get that addressed as well. So with that, and we can continue the discussion as we go along, but I would like to open up our next round of interactive polling, since that's what's most interesting to us this evening and getting more feedback so you can help guide us in our work. So first, we'd like to talk about some opportunities and constraints. And we'll do that in a pretty simple way. We can respond and let us know your opinion of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and limitations. So we'll go through those one at a time. And from this, we're really looking at overall trends and comparing what you're looking at and experiencing to the data that we've been looking at as well. So same way, if you've already connected, you should still have that up on your phone, or if you've left the internet browser window open at home. And then you can list keywords here. They don't have to all relate to each other. You can enter as many as you'd like. And the idea here is, what are the strengths of Marshfield? And this is a pretty straightforward strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat type of exercise, SWOT, they sometimes call it. And it really does help get at the important priorities, helps to triangulate with those 4 different buckets of information on where the priorities and interests in the community lie. So in those responses, I'm seeing community and the beaches and the history, residents, restaurants, the waterways, multi-generational. village, resilience, fishing, the woods and natural. Great, it looks like that's slowed down a little bit, so I'll move on to the next one. And next is the flip side of that, so not strengths but weaknesses. So what do you see as something that could be better, or something that you wouldn't mind if it changed? And infrastructure is showing up again, diversity, administrator, government, flood, housing, resources, affordability shows up in there. Interaction, taxes, hazard, design. All right. So everyone's got the weaknesses. Thank you for that. I'll move on to the next one now. And this is shifting to opportunities. So what is the sort of turning those weaknesses into something that can be an opportunity for growth, for change, improvement? Town center and sidewalks. Downtown. Brant Rock development. Density housing and Esplanade all look like they're about the same size. Looks like Brant Rock has settled in there in the center with sidewalks. It's good opportunities. All right, so let's move on to the last item here. Which is limitations. So let us know what some of the hurdles are that might be stopping that opportunity or the strength. So we see funding, town parking, downtown and money. the wetlands. Floodplains. Looks like DPW shows up in there. All right. Thank you for all of those responses. And again, we'll be taking a look at all these responses. We get the frequency of each response as well. We'll be looking for patterns and comparing that to the other answers this evening. So next we want to shift a little bit toward an economic development vision. We have a few questions initially about the vision, and then we have the previous vision statement, which we're going to pull forward and ask for some insights and feedback on. Again, everyone should be connected. You all just were. So move right along to that. So as we're building a vision, I want to think about a few things. And this is mostly kind of geographically related, the first question. So what is the most important area for the future economy in Marshfield? Is it the business districts, industrial districts, marina and harbor, the beaches, the downtown? And I apologize, you still only can choose one, so I know that this was one of the questions where it would be likely that you could like a few of these answers. So you're most important for the future of the economy. Or the downtown or commercial corridors, the residential neighborhoods. And if we haven't pre-populated the right answer, you can feel free to let us know in the room, just verbalize it, or you can put it in the chat if you're at home, and you can select other just to let us know that we don't have the right answer for you. So I do see other, so let us know. Sasha can tell me if you're in the chat, or if you're here, just shout it out.
Well, okay, what do you mean?
Okay.
There's no mixed use in this table.
Okay, mixed use, very good. Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. Looks like most people are talking about business districts, which may be consistent with mixed use if we were to phrase it that way. Then we've got the beaches and the downtown, and then some answers in commercial corridors and residential neighborhoods. Thank you for that.
I would just clarify that mixed use and business are not the same thing. You know, there's no reason why the residential, residences and most of the businesses in Marshfield can't be in the same place. It's not like, the noxious fumes of the grocery store and the restaurants are going to make it impossible for residents to live nearby.
Got it. Point taken. I retract my previous statement. All right. So this looks good. Did we have another other? Looked like maybe the percentage went up again. Any thoughts, Sasha? No? Chat?
No,
All right.
just a reminder that folks can't hear the audience on Zoom.
Okay.
I've been putting the comments in the chat.
Thank you for that. Apologize for, we'll try to do better in terms of repeating comments and questions for those at home. The next question is, what is the most important area of focus? And this is more thematic. So supporting small businesses, attracting new uses, supporting the workforce, attracting new residents, attracting new employees, private investment in business districts, or public investment in infrastructure and streetscape, supporting water-related uses, attracting visitors to destinations, increasing events and amenities. Or again, if we didn't hit the right answer with any of those, you can click other and let us know your thoughts. It's like public investment in infrastructure and streetscape is leading the way, followed by increasing events and amenities. We have attracting new uses and private investment in business districts, followed by supporting small businesses. Okay. We open up the next question. So if you had to write a vision statement, what would be the headline or a few key words that you would use to describe where you'd like to see economic development headed in Marshfield? Village, that's a good start. You'll have to give us enough to go on. We're going to try to write a vision statement from this. It's looking better, yeah. Cohesive, inclusive, connected, live, work, play. Downtown, the village, pedestrians, bikers. Sustainable. Cohesive and safety. The Esplanade. Great. It looks like there's a lot of rich ideas in that. Just give one more second. It's like safety and cohesiveness came through with dynamic and sustainable. All right. Oops, sorry. This next question, did it again? All right, how close is Marshfield's economy to your ideal vision? Choose one. Is it very close, close, not so close, or not close at all? This helps us kind of determine the order of magnitude in terms of how.
How about a B minus?
Yeah, I guess in this case you could correlate these to grades pretty easily.
Josh, do you have a participation count that you know how many data points or how many different individuals are weighing in?
I cannot see that live at the moment. I can do it if I exit out. Sasha, you may be able to see that if you log into Poll Everywhere on the website. We'll see if we can get that.
I can tell you that there are 14 people on Zoom.
Okay, there are 14 people on Zoom in addition to 25 or so in the room, maybe? All right, so it looks like the majority are, if we go with grades, with C, a not close, followed by a B, close. So this helps us in terms of how transformative or dramatic some of the recommendations may want to be.
So would you say like the top two boxes are 47 and so are we, like what would your, looking at this poll, what would your position be? Do you think we're close, right in the middle?
I would say we can, what we'll probably do to interpret these results a little more scientifically once we get done is look at the actual number of respondents within each of these categories and then compare those as well. Just a preview, we will also, the percentages are sometimes misleading, so it's good to look at the actual frequency of the responses, but it would land between close and not close. We'll also be providing these same questions as an interactive online survey, so that people who are not able to attend with us this evening can add results to this. So we're hoping that over the next few weeks, we can build up the count on each of these questions to help make that a more reliable data point. So this was from the previous Marshfield master plan that I mentioned out of 2015. This is the vision statement, which was not only an economic development vision statement, but a town-wide vision statement for the comprehensive plan for land use, housing, transportation, economic development, and other topics. So you can see here, we have highlighted one statement within this vision statement, which is pointing toward economic development. And it reads, while we have many businesses, and we will continue to encourage new businesses, those businesses will be primarily oriented toward meeting the needs of the residents of Marshfield rather than the needs of the broader region. So we just wanted to clue in on that and see how relevant that feels to people today for economic development in the town. So remember that statement, and I guess I don't know if people want to look at the statement more generally, but that's focused in on the most relevant to economic development. But it does talk about many of the qualities that you all have mentioned in the polling so far: the beaches, marshes, rivers, historic structures and sites, and the villages in open space. So there's a lot of the vision statement. We're not trying to throw the previous vision statement under the bus or anything. Just trying to get your heat check on it today. So the first question is, how do you feel about this previous vision statement for economic development in Marshfield today? And this ranges again from it's still about right to it needs a few updates, it should be rewritten, or if you have some other reaction to it, you can let us know what that is. So it looks like that's mostly still relevant to people, with a few updates perhaps, based upon the feedback we've heard from people this evening. Now it looks a little more balanced with it should be rewritten, but probably falls mostly in the it needs a few updates category. All right. And then if you were to take your hand at updating that vision statement, what key words would you maybe add in, or what direction might you head with that revision? Nothing. It still looks good to some people. Add some language about inclusivity. Some additional nothing responses, it looks like. Add more about pedestrians and shops, growth. But it still looks like inclusive and nothing are the most frequent responses. And as we analyze the responses too, we will do a little bit of a washing through in terms of typos and things like that, just to make sure that everyone's answers are counting. Yes, sir, question.
It looks like your program wants you to put in one word, but some people are putting in Grant Rock and they're probably entering it as two words. So Grant Rock should be just entered as one word. And that's why you're seeing Grant and Rock show up in different places and it's smaller.
Yes, thank you for that. We'll sort that out back at the office. But the comment was about entering one word versus two words, and how Brant Rock is getting separated in these answers and shows up as sort of Brant and Rock separately, or maybe Rock doesn't show up at all. So we will. That's good observation. We'll sort that out.
It appears as entered on the back end.
Okay. So it's easier for us to see behind the scenes than it is on the screen here. So a few more answers have come in the meantime. So we see regional growth inclusive, and still nothing is looks like the most frequent response in terms of that scale. Growth may have just snuck out the win at the last moment here. All right. So we'll take a look at all that, and again, be compiling it with additional results that we may receive either from paper surveys this evening or from additional interactive online responses later on. So I wanted to shift one level down too and talk about some potential goals. And we haven't started thinking about goals in this process yet, but are relying again on goals from previous processes just to see how people are, what direction people would like to see us head in. So first I have a few slides which have a lot of text which might be too small on the screen, which just relate some of the previous recommendations by areas of town. And these are the recommendations which still remain not completed. So there were more recommendations than this, and accolades to the town staff and planning department for actually getting a fair amount of those recommendations completed, and others. But these are the ones that, from the best of our ability to tell, remain incomplete, and wanted to check and see if these seem relevant still. So they include things like considering financial incentives for redevelopment, reviewing regulations related to activity, restaurants, nightlife, et cetera, to make places more active and vital, creating a gateway for downtown, creating downtown design guidelines, continuing to make improvements to downtown sidewalks and streetscape, designating a portion or all of the downtown area as a cultural district, and working with property owners and local artists to install art installations and other exhibits to improve that sense of activity and vibrance. So those were recommendations in downtown. Some recommendations that remain in Enterprise Park: rezoning the I-1 frontage on 139 to B2 so that both sides are consistently zoned B2 on that stretch of road, recruiting a hotel with meeting space and medical facility in that Enterprise Park area, working with an institutional partner to think about other attractions and destination uses and employment centers that could come to the town. And then Brant Rock, creating a business improvement district, exploring stormwater management and improving that infrastructure, targeting streetscape improvements that are resilient, clarifying residential uses allowed on the second floor and the half story above the second floor. And then we have additional recommendations in the category of harbor management, working waterfront, and infrastructure. So those include things like ensuring the public infrastructure and shoreside arrangements are planned for future needs, developing a branding strategy for local waterfront businesses, expanding the use of Marshfield's working waterfronts to accommodate new uses, expanding commercial shell fishing, continue to review the town's permitting processes, a comprehensive marketing plan and branding, updating the town's website regularly on a weekly basis if possible. And exploring best practices and solutions for infrastructure capacity constraints, and engaging with state agencies for local business incentives, and then finally supporting public-private partnerships and workforce training. Then one final last category with just a few more. Consider establishing design guidelines for all commercial developments across the town, exploring opportunities for creating a regional transportation management association, a TMA, considering a shuttle service for private employers to the North Situate commuter rail stop or between parking areas and the beaches, and rezoning the town pier to commercial B4 to encourage more maritime commercial fishing related business along that waterfront area. So the questions we want to have you help us focus on what's relevant today. And so we'll do that with these three questions here. First is by set. So which of these sets of goals seem most relevant to you today? Yes, question.
Before we vote on this, could we kind of go back through, like, in the recommendations for Brant Rock, I only noticed the first version, and then I saw fee, and then you moved to the next page. So I wasn't sure if you could bring that up.
Yeah,
I want to vote on recommendations for Brant Rock, but it's hard when, I don't know, you just flash through it really quickly.
let me see if I can verbally, because I don't want to jinx our technology here. And,
There was a fee associated with our board district, that's why I saw the blurb on, under Brant Rock, first bullet.
Fee, as in F-E-E?
Correct.
I didn't see that.
no, I don't think that was one of them.
It was under the Brant Rock heading.
Just a
It
second.
was the second page on your goals.
Oh, I think it was BID, Business Improvement District, was maybe the bullet.
I think, and then you mentioned a fee on the business improvement district, like, what does that mean? I've never seen anything related.
Oh, yeah, so a business improvement district in this, we don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but it's basically a self-taxing district that then creates the funding for improvements in that district. So it's voted on by the property owners and the businesses of a district that then creates a revenue source. So maybe if you saw the word fee, that might have been, there is revenue generation and expenditures associated with the BID.
So it would be in addition to the property tax we already pay, and the
Correct.
business tax,
Correct. It's a,
and the VRDO tax, what are all the other taxes that are associated? This would be an additional levy.
correct. This is a often controversial recommendation because of the very nature of it being an additional levy on property owners. It's voluntary.
Understood.
Yeah.
But does that mean that we would get additional resources than other parts of the town because of that levy?
It's basically self-serving. So it's taxing yourself to then have improvements in that area only. You're not taxing yourself to then improve other areas of the town.
Right.
Only for Brant Rock Village
Yeah.
area.
Right.
You guys have the option.
That's
to
the reason
pay.
why I don't own a condo, is because I don't like the HOA fee.
Yeah, it's like similar to an HOA fee.
Understood. And then, was there anything else within those bullets? Again, I only read that first bullet and I came across fee. And then you just,
There was improving flooding and stormwater management, targeting streetscape improvements that are resilient, and clarifying second floor residential uses allowed, were the main bullet summaries. And that was a question about what the Brant Rock goals were. Sorry, people at home, keep doing that. So while we were talking, looks like most people have responded with their answers. Looks like the majority are recommendations for Brant Rock, followed by recommendations for downtown, and then the category of other recommendations. And then also the harbor management, working waterfront, and Enterprise Park did get some votes as well. And then this is pretty big, and it's really the work that we have to do in front of us. But if anything jumped out at you as really missing from those previous sets of goals, let us know with a few key words. If there's, the issue in town didn't show up in those lists at all, let us know about that, and just to make sure that it's on our radar. I'm sure that we probably heard about it in stakeholder reviews and other things, but let us know what's missing from your view. So more on infrastructure, investment. Yeah, traffic didn't show up that much, actually. Infrastructure is getting more responses, potentially. Tax rebates, management, charter, nothing. Investment. Looks like traffic is remaining as one of the most frequent, along with investment in nothing, and infrastructure, I guess. I think traffic is important to note and goes hand in hand with the walkability and sort of connected villages ideas, but traffic also needs to be addressed in those considerations. All right, so I think we have one more question. So we've paraphrased and summarized and grouped a few of those previous goals together. But this is a question about what is the most important previous goal, and what we've paraphrased and summarized them as is explore financial incentives, improve places and buildings, improve walkability, support cultural activity, identify new uses and community partners, improve infrastructure, improve marketing and branding, support workforce training, encourage more maritime or waterfront uses, or other, and feel free to add those into the chat or let us know. Yeah, so it does seem that a lot of the responses and conversation this evening have been guiding us toward more physical environment improvements. So the places, the infrastructure, the buildings, the look and feel of the districts themselves. So I think that's really important and critical feedback that can guide where our recommendations head. Looks like here, improve infrastructure is the lead response, followed by improved places and buildings, improving walkability. We also have some responses on identify new uses and community partners, support cultural activity, and encourage more maritime and waterfront uses. So not as much on financial incentives, marketing, or workforce-related recommendations, which is helpful direction. Okay, looks like most everyone's got their responses in. So we have, we've done pretty well on time this evening, so I did want to open it up and see if there are any other questions or comments or just thoughts you have based upon the conversation we've had this evening. And at this point, I invite you to actually come up to the microphone so we can treat our, they probably still won't be able to hear on Zoom, would they? All right, well, come up to the microphone if you do have a question or comment, and we'll have a conversation.
Could you go back to the slide that shows the movement of money? You said that there's a lot of spending going on outside of town versus inside of town. Could you tell us a little more about how that was figured out?
The retail gap analysis, I think you're referring to. Yes. Yeah, so this is probably one of the less helpful slides of the evening, actually, because these numbers are just incomprehensible. But behind this summary table is a more detailed analysis by retail, more detailed retail segments. And it's still, so that there's a few caveats with this data. I think a few of them I touched on before, which are the larger trends in terms of inflation, e-commerce, and COVID habits. The other caveat here, which is a data caveat, is that I think this analysis is dependent on data which is at least a few years old. I think it might have been from 2019 or something in that neighborhood. But the basic, oh wait, 2017, thank you. It's on my slide. The basic take-home message, looking at all of this, is that more Marshfield residents are spending a decent amount of disposable income outside of the community across all types of retail, shops, including food service, including sporting goods, automobiles, like all the different types of retail that you could imagine. And that was across the board. So usually these types of analysis will show a retail type which is having the leakage, they call it, so the leakage of money outside of the community. And then that would be the area that you could focus on, for example, attracting a new sporting goods store to your downtown because that's where all the leakage is. In this case, because we're seeing leakage really across the board, it's in my mind, a less helpful analysis because you can't zero in on the segment of recruiting, business recruitment that could occur. I think among the leakage, the strongest was food services, which would include restaurant uses, that the town and the people with disposable income and residents of the town could readily support additional restaurants in the town, and that they would be potentially successful. Of course, all this depends on the individual business model, the space, the location. So it's not, these are always tough because there's not a one-to-one relationship between a retail gap analysis and a successful business, but it's showing you the context for what could be successful. In this case, the context is pretty wide open, and that I think this correlates back to the disposable income in the town as well, being high.
To me, that's very troubling that your conclusion would be, therefore, we can have more stores and businesses in town. I just don't see where that comes from. I would have to know more, but that's very troubling to hear that.
Understood. So, sorry, the question, I'm getting a report back that the residents at home still cannot hear. So the question was about this slide, which is on the screen now, and learning more about the data that's behind this slide, which we can share as well. And then my response was in response to that. Sir.
I would just add to your response that the geography of the region and Marshfield also has a lot to do with this, because we're at the edge of the ocean, and regional trade and retail sites are surrounded 360 degrees, great regional sites like the Braintree Mall. Braintree doesn't have retail leakage because people drive 20 miles to go to the Braintree Mall to spend a lot of money, and they're pulling people from every compass point. So Marshfield's never going to be able to compete with that, simply because of geography. We also have indicated in the previous vision that we don't want to be a regional retail draw. So Home Depot's not coming to Marshfield either. So.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know if I'll be able to do that justice, but the comment was that the geography of Marshfield and other considerations from the community influenced this figure as well. And certainly I don't think, maybe I can review the tape and look at my verbal remarks, but we're not saying that this results in new retail shops in Marshfield. We're giving a data point to show that context, but I think we've illustrated through the comments that have already been made that there are plenty of reasons why this data might not point to huge, the next 5 big boxes coming to Marshfield. That's not what we're saying. That's not the conclusion we're drawing. There are lots of other variables and reasons that counteract this data. So maybe it's a good cautionary tale that this data might not be the best to be using anyhow. Yeah.
Josh, Jeremy Devaney with the Marshfield Chamber of Commerce. Just as we continue building this out, I don't disagree with the comments of the previous two. More of everything isn't always better. And when we think about the future and securing the future for another generations beyond ours, we like to think about adding value. And in the context of adding value, we like to think of Marshfield as a village with artisanal experts in various crafts, whether that's running restaurants, whether that's a small business that's opened up to run a marketing shop here, whether that's a restaurant in town that's trying to do business. We like to think of how much value are they adding to the community and how much are they adding to the region. And if we can't elevate how much value we're adding and help our businesses add that value, then we'll never attract other outside investment. We'll always be dependent on the good graces and the tax levies. And we want to shift that so we can become proactive in our infrastructure development. We can choose our own destiny, and we really can secure our own future by delivering enhanced value to our community and our greater region.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. The less eloquent Cliff Notes version of that for our audience at home from Jeremy in the chamber was that it's more about adding value, not more about adding everything everywhere, and looking for adding to the community in the region and building that value enhancement so that you're attracting additional outside investment and that it's a sort of self-increasing cycle of virtue. So that's I think, excellent framework as well. Other thoughts and comments? All right, so let me skip ahead here since I'm back in my, sorry to give you all whiplash with this. So I do want to share just a few comments about our next steps. So as we mentioned, here we are in August at this first community workshop. We'll be leaving the kind of having this community workshop period stay open, so to speak, with an online survey. So over the next few weeks, if you haven't had the chance to respond, the recording of this meeting will be available. You can watch that recording, you can download the presentation and respond to the same questions that were a part of this meeting. We'll be then analyzing those findings from all the feedback that we've received, looking at the comments, comparing those to the stakeholder interviews that we've completed. Then we'll be coming back to the planning board probably in the September timeframe or so, in talking with them about those results and where to head from there. From there, we'll be preparing some preliminary recommendations and working those through, probably meeting as we prepare those recommendations with the planning board for their guidance again, prior to a second community workshop, which the purpose would be to bring forward that initial thought of recommendations so that the community, can react to it and guide us and help improve them. Then we would be sharpening our pencils from there and looking to finalize recommendations and a report that we then present and prepare for the planning board, probably at the beginning of the next year.
Josh, can you just touch on the adoption of the final report after planning board review?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question that we haven't. So the question is about the adoption of the report from the planning board review. We haven't talked about that, but typically what happens is a planning study of this nature is not necessarily formally adopted by the town. It's providing recommendations which the town can act upon. And then the implementation of those recommendations will be up to various town departments, the chamber or other actors, and will be up to them to kind of take those up and follow upon those recommendations. That's why I think the conversation we're having is so important, because we want recommendations which are relevant to the implementers, which will be picking those items up. But it's less the case. Sometimes it happens, but not typically in our work, that the actual plan itself would be adopted formally by the select board or at town meeting, for example. But the planning board will, since they are the board that's leading this effort, will be receiving our recommendations and accepting them, and then that's where it would lie from there. Greg,
Josh,
yes.
All previous master plans in Marshfield, that it was the planning board's vote to accept.
Okay.
It did not go to town meeting.
So Greg has stated that all previous master plans in Marshfield, it was the planning board's vote to accept the master plan. They have not gone to another board or town meeting. Thank you for clarifying that, Greg. So just in summary, we'll get the recording of this presentation and the presentation materials themselves to the planning department for posting on the town website. We do have an online survey already created, which is the same questions that we saw in the meeting this evening, and that's at the bit.ly address that's on the screen now. We'll also make sure that that link is available on the town website. And as I've mentioned, I have been doing stakeholder interviews So if the format this evening was entirely unsatisfying to you and you'd like to have a more freewheeling conversation with me, please do email me and we can set up a time to talk. I've done half a dozen of those or so far, and would be happy to do more. They're very helpful. So if you have half hour or an hour to give over the next few weeks, I'd be happy to respond to your email and set up a time for us to talk in a stakeholder interview. With that, I thank you all for taking the time this evening and really appreciate the feedback you've given us, and we look forward to really making sure that we bring this into some actionable economic development recommendations for the town. Thank you so much.
Thank you.